Synth pedals, or pedals that make your guitar sound like a synthesizer, can transform your tone in some radical ways. But in this video, I'm going to show you 5 pro tips for using them and for thinking about how to use them that'll help you be creative and original. For pro tip number 1, I want to talk about tracking errors. Anytime a synthesizer type pedal has to struggle to detect what note you're playing, it'll glitch out and produce some weird sounds that are known as tracking errors. Now, one way to eliminate tracking errors is to play as cleanly as possible. And in my opinion, a huge part of this is like muting your guitar strings, muting any string except the string you're playing at any given moment. If you can do that with technique, that's a very good way to cut down on tracking errors. But my real pro tip is that the reason it's good to play like that is that you can then generate tracking errors on purpose and control them in a musical way. So for this pro tip, we have to talk about the C4 synth from Source Audio. This is a very powerful synthesizer pedal that can do a lot of different things. I have a whole separate video dedicated to this pedal, but my single favorite thing about it is that when it produces tracking errors, they're like musical events. So what you're about to hear is a guitar solo on my next record that I composed specifically for the tracking errors of the C4 pedal. And there were 2 things I was doing to generate those tracking errors. One is I was just playing dead strings. Like if you mute a string and pluck it so that it produces a non-pitched scratch, the C4 pedal interprets that in a way that is like right and good. It's like there's like a jackpot tracking error you can get by doing that. And the other thing I was doing was playing a lot of close intervals, like jamming little cluster chords into my phrases. Those also become like hiccups in the C4 synth that are cool. So what you're about to hear is a guitar solo on my next record that I composed specifically for these tracking errors. By the way, if you want to buy any of the gear in this video, I have affiliate links you can use that'll give me a small commission on anything you buy. Even if you don't want to buy pedals, I have affiliate links for cables and other pedal board utilities like that. I'll put the affiliate links in the video description. Money. Pro tip number 2 is synthesizer pedals can produce sounds that are so unlike a normal guitar sound that a lot of things you're used to doing that sound good might not work anymore. For this example, I'm going to use the Poly Blue Octave pedal from MXR. This can produce a very gnarly, very hardcore fuzz bass sound just from a guitar signal that sounds like this. But that was me recording directly out of the pedal. If I took that and ran it into a guitar amp, it would sound like this. Now, in my opinion, that kind of ruined it. So the pro tip is don't be afraid to do stuff like recording out of pedals that you might not be used to, but that'll actually work better in a synthesizer world. Another pro tip is when you get a super crazy bass sound like that, it can be tempting to think, well, now if I double track and I combine that with my regular heaviest guitar sound, that'll be like the heaviest thing ever. In my experience, that can backfire, and like the different distortions can clash, and if you just like try to put heavy distortion on heavy distortion, it can make things sound kind of tinny and smaller. In my experience, it can get bigger and heavier if you double track with just a moderate amount of distortion, like going directly into an amp that's just a little bit overdriven. So what you're about to hear is me using the Poly Blue Octave as like a super crazy, super fuzzy bass sound, and I recorded directly out of the pedal. And then I double tracked, just going to guitar straight into a Marshall amp with a modest amount of distortion. pro tip number 3, I'm going to use the Boss SY1. A lot of the presets in this pedal are pads, and a pad is just a sound that doesn't decay. So they're used a lot for like holding chords. Now, I'm a little bit anti-pad. Like compositionally, I think sitting on block chords tends to be a bad habit. It's usually not the coolest thing you could be doing. Introducing some kind of movement or like some kind of rhythm or like some kind of on-off anything, I think is usually the stronger choice. But there's a quick and dirty way to make any pad sound cool, which is to run it into a tremolo. So for what you're about to hear, I'm going to run this pad from the Boss SY1 into the Strymon Mobius. I like to use this because there's a way to set up a tremolo that has a sawtooth wave, which I like, but you don't have to do anything this fancy. You could run any pad into any tremolo, and in my opinion, it'll get less cheesy and more interesting. One universal way to make your guitar sound like not a guitar is to mess with the beginning and the end of your notes, like specifically the onset and the decay of your notes. If you can mangle those, you can make your guitar sound unusual. And there's a pedal that makes it very easy to do that, which is the Attack Decay from Electro Harmonics. In my opinion, the special thing about this pedal is that it has a knob for decay specifically. It lets you mess with how your notes end. That's unusual, in my opinion. To my knowledge, there's like a few pedals that'll let you mess with the attack side, the onset of your notes, pedals that will do some kind of swell effect. Those are out there. I'm not aware of a lot of gear in pedal form that'll let you mess with the decay. So what you're about to hear is me using this pedal to create an unnaturally abrupt ending to my notes. They like decay in a way that is un-guitar-like. And then I'm also using the built-in fuzz. There's some fuzz in this pedal you can turn on or off separately, and that can also like help you sculpt a bizarre sound. What you're about to hear is me doing that. The thing I like about this sound is one of the more subtle sounds in this video, but the thing I like about it is that if I heard it on a record, I would be unsure whether it was guitar or synth or what. It sort of sits in this like unusual in-between place, and I like that. At one point while I was making this video, I had this thought, like, what would happen if I made a pedal board just for all my synthesizer pedals, and then I turned all of them on at the same time? And then I was like, I can't do that. That's like too scary. I don't want to do that. And then I was like, I have to do it. I have to do it for the YouTube video. So I made a pedal board just for my synthesizer pedals, and then I turned them all on. The pedal board I made was like sort of quick and easy. I used the Gator board. I used Hosa Cables. I used the CIOKS power source. If you want to buy any of that stuff, once again, I have affiliate links. Money. But then I turned them all on. This is what happened. I started with the Keeley Synth-1. I ran that into the Boss SY1, and it became this. I was using a non-pad sound from the Boss SY1. Then I ran that into the MXR Poly Blue Octave. This was the moment where I was like, maybe this is going to be okay. Then I ran that into the Electro Harmonics Attack Decay. And then I ran that into the C4 synth. Now, as you can hear, I was using the C4 synth as a tremolo. That pedal has a built-in tremolo. That pedal can do an unbelievable number of things. But the point is, I like that sound. So the pro tip is don't be a wuss. It can be good to try things that you think are going to be terrible because they might not be terrible. That sound, I think, is a keeper. I used it to make this. Okay, but if you don't have 5 different synthesizer pedals to put on one pedal board and you still want some straightforward advice about how not to be a wuss, the other thing I can tell you is it can be good to like force some of these pedals to be polyphonic even if they don't want to. So for this one, we're going to look at the Keeley Synth-1. If you put this on sawtooth mode, I think it sounds the best if you glitch it out with polyphonic input. I don't know why sawtooth mode is the one. But that's the other thing. At some point, I want you to develop an ear for when the bullshit is going to be usable bullshit. Like, that's something else I want you to get to at some point. And in this case, the usable bullshit is the sawtooth mode on the Keeley Synth-1. If you play more than one note into that, it'll generate a texture that I think is cool. What I ended up doing was I double-tracked with the much more conventional fuzz sound. I was using the ZVEX Fuzz Factory. That, against the Keeley Synth-1 having a breakdown, sounded good.